Good morning and welcome to our next maths lesson. Now this morning we're going to look at how to convert from fractions to percentages. Okay? So the first type of question you could get when converting fractions to percentages is a question like this, which says what percentage of the shape is shaded green? And here we are looking at this shape here. Okay, this is a prime example of something you could get in a SATs paper or in an end of year test, so it's something we need to know how to answer. So the first question we need to think about here is to answer our main question. So here's our main question: what percentage of the shape is shaded green? But first then we need to think about how many squares are there all together in this diagram. Now that's quite simple to do because all we can do is count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So there are 20 squares all together. Another way we could have done that is we could have recognised there are 5 squares going across, and there are 4 squares vertically, and 5 times 4 gives us 20, and we use our knowledge of area there, of cuboids or of squares, to help us calculate that more quickly than just counting each one. Either way, we should have got the answer of 20. The next thing we need to look at is how many squares are shaded green? Well, again, this is just a simple counting exercise. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we've got 6 squares shaded green. Then we think about how we can say that as a sentence. So I could say there are 20 squares and 6 of them are shaded green. I could also say there are 6 out of 20 squares shaded green. I then think about how we can write that sentence as a fraction. Well, if I'm saying there are 6 out of 20, or out of 20 squares, 6 of them are green, then you can see that I could write there are 6 out of 20 squares that are green, or I could write out of 20 squares there are 6 that are green. Either way, you can see I'm still writing down the same fraction here. We then think again, what does percent mean? This is something we looked at yesterday, and we should all know now that percent means out of 100. And there, can we now write our fraction as an equivalent fraction out of 100? So we've got our fraction, 6/20ths, and we know that if ever we're converting to a percent, we want to get to a denominator of 100. So can I get from 20 to 100? This is something we looked at yesterday. So how do I get from 20 to 100? I can say I can if I multiply by 5. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So 6 times 5 would be 30. And therefore, the answer to my question, what percentage of the shape is shaded green, we now know is 30 out of 100. And whenever we hear out of 100, we can write percent. So I know my answer is 30%. Let's look at another one. What percentage of this shape is shaded purple? Now, what is the first question we have to ask here? Because we know our original question, we know the main question that we've got to answer to get the mark, but to get the correct answer, there are a number of questions we've got to go through. Can you remember what they are? The first one, how many squares are all together? So I'm going to do it the quicker way this time. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going across. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going up and down. So I now know, because 6 times 5, and I use my knowledge of area again, 6 times 5 is 30. So altogether we've got 30 squares here. Now if you need to count them all up, then please do that. What's the second question then? How many squares are shaded green? Should that say green this time? Should we say green, or should we now be saying purple? So how many squares are shaded purple? Well, again, I can see that. I shouldn't really need to count, but if we do need to count to make sure, we can. There are 3. How can we say that as a sentence? So out of 30 squares, 3 of them are shaded purple, or 3 out of 30 squares are shaded purple. Again, then, I try and write that as a fraction. So out of 30, 3 are shaded purple, or 3 out of 30 squares are shaded purple. You can see either way we get the same fraction. What does percent mean? We should all know this off by heart now. Percent means out of 100. Then can we write our fraction as an equivalent fraction out of 100? So I've got 3/30ths, and I want to get to hundredths. Can I times 30 by something to get to 100? No, I can't. So now, like we did yesterday, can we simplify first to then get to the fraction with a denominator of 100. So I'm starting off with 3/30ths and I'm going through my 4 questions here. Do they go into the 10 times table? No. Do they go into the 5 times table? Both of them? No. Do they go into the 2 times table, both of them? Well, 30 does, but 3 doesn't, so no. Do they go into any other times table? So what times table does both 3 and 30 go into? And I can see they both go into the 3 times table. So I now divide the top, the numerator, and the bottom, the denominator, by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. Now I check, can I go from 10 to 100? Yes, I can. How can I go from 10 to 100? Well, I should know my times tables. I am just multiplying by 10. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top, and 1 times 10 is 10. Now you should all be able to see that when we get to 10 100ths, we can write that as 10%. Because whenever we see out of 100, we can write percent. So what percentage of the shape is shaded purple? And the answer would be 10%. So now it's your turn, and I've left the questions up on the board so that you can see. So first of all, think about how many squares are there altogether, then how many squares are shaded, how can you say that as a sentence, how can we write them then as a fraction, and this step here, number 3, is really helpful for step number 4. If we can read that sentence, we can write it as a fraction. Then remember, what does percent mean? We should all know that, so I'll just pop that in there. It should mean out of 100. And then can we write our fractions as an equivalent fraction out of 100? So I want you to have a go at number 1, 2, 3, and 4, please. So please pause the video here and give yourself a chance to answer those 4 questions. Okay, so you should have given yourself enough chance to answer those 4 questions. You should all have 4 percentages on your maths books. So let's see. The first one, we should have seen there were 20 squares altogether, and 3 of them were shaded in. We should then be saying that as a sentence, 3 out of 20 are shaded in, and therefore we get our fraction 3 over 20. We can then go straight from 20, a denominator of 20, to a denominator of 100 by timesing by 5. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top, so 3 times 5 is 15. And then we can convert that to a percent, because now we've got that out of 100, we know we can go straight to 15%. Number 2, 4 are shaded in, and there are 25 rectangles altogether. Again, we can see that we can go straight from 25ths to 100ths, and now that we've got our magic number 100, because we've times by 4 here to get that, whatever we've done to the denominator, we do to the numerator, we know that we can go straight to 16%. Number 3, this time there are 13 shaded in out of a total of 50. We can see that 50 multiplied by 2 gives us the denominator of 100, which is what we're looking for. We convert it to a percentage, and therefore 26 out of 100 can just be converted straight to 26%. Now the last one's a little bit trickier, because we've got 4 rectangles out of 40 that are shaded in. Now we cannot go from 40 to 100 in one jump. There's nothing we can times 40 by to get to 100. So instead, what we've got to do is we've got to simplify first. And this is where I go through the sayings, isn't it? Do they both go into the 10 times table? No, they don't. 40 does, 4 doesn't, so we can't divide both by 10. Do they both go into the 5 times table? No, they don't. Do both the numerator and denominator into the 2 times table? I can see yes, they do, because they're both even numbers. So I first have to divide by 2. Now I check, is there something I can times 20 by to get to 100? And I should be able to see yes, there is. 20 times by 5 is 100, and therefore whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. We times 2 by 5 to get to 10. Once we've got this magic denominator of 100, we know we can go straight to 10%. And we've got our answers there, so please mark your work. I was going to go through that with you, but we've just gone through it, okay? So don't worry about that. So, in fact, I'm going to go through this very quickly. So, on here, the board here now, the second way we could do this is we can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shaded in out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, So there's 5 going across, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've got out of 40. This is the second way that you can do number 4. So we've got 4 40ths shaded in, 4 squares out of 40 are shaded in. Now, I could see straight away that that is equivalent to 1/10, because I can see they both go into the 4 times table. Now, if you know your learn by heart facts, we should know what 1/10 is equivalent to straight away. We should know that 1/10 is equivalent to 10%. And there straight away, probably in less jumps because you know your learn by heart facts, we have got the answer of 10%. If we flick back, you can see it is also the answer we got to number 4, doing it the longer method, okay? And you need to make that decision. If you don't know your learn by heart facts, you need to be getting to this denominator of 100 all the time. If you know them, sometimes you might have a little bit of a shortcut. So I want you to have a go, please, at these 2 questions. Pause the video now and have a go at them and see, can you do it the quicker way or do you need to still do it the longer way? So pause the video now. So you should have had enough time to answer these questions. So when we are answering these questions, you should have been able to count and see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 shaded. There are 8 in total, which gives us a fraction of 4 out of 8. When we simplify that, you should be able to see we can get down to 1/2. And if you know your learn by hearts, you should know that is 50%. However, if you don't know your learn by hearts, you could have got to 1/2. And then we need to get to a denominator of 100. So we times by 50. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. And we get to 50 again, 50 100ths, which we know then is 50%. So you can see that both of them give us the same answer. But if you know these learn by heart facts, it's just a little bit quicker. Okay? Same here. You should have been able to count 1, 2, 3 are shaded in out of 6. Again, you know that that is equal to 1/2 because the top and the bottom go into the 3 times table. The numerator and denominator both go into the 3 times table. And therefore, we could have known, using our learn by heart facts, 50%. If you didn't know that, you could have gone back to this method down here and got to 50% anyway. Okay? Right, let's look at a different type of question then. What percentage of children voted yes? What percentage of children voted no? And what percentage of children voted don't know? So how do we answer these types of questions? Okay, so let's have a look at this now. So we've got number 1, we've got number 2, and we've got number 3. And you could be asked any of these questions in your exam, and it's always the same type of method that we use. So let's look at the different questions we've got to answer here. Just like when we had this the shape before that was divided into different rectangles, different squares, the first thing we need to know is how many children voted altogether. So I know 13 voted yes, 10 voted no, and 2 voted don't know. So how can I work out how many children voted altogether? Well, quite simply, I would add up all of the votes, and that will tell me how many people voted. So 13 add 10 would get me to 23, and then add another 2 would get me to 25. So I now know that 25 children voted altogether. The next thing I need to know is how many children voted yes. Well, the table tells me here. I can see the row for yes, and it shows me that 13 people voted yes. Well, 13 out of what? And this is where we need to know how many children voted altogether and where we use that information. Well, I know that 13 voted yes, but 25 voted altogether. So 13 children out of 25 voted yes. What about how many voted no then? Again, I look for the row that has no, and I can see that 10 children voted no. Well, how do we write that out as a fraction? Well, I know 25 children voted altogether, and 10 of them voted no. So I know that 10 out of 25 children voted no. And then, how many voted don't know? Well, again, we look for the right row where it says don't know, and I read across, and I can see 2 children voted for don't know. How do we write that as a fraction? Well, 2 children voted don't know, but 2 out of 25 voted that they weren't sure, they didn't know. Now we remember again, what does percent mean? And everyone should know this, that percent means out of 100. Then, can we convert each fraction so that it has a denominator of 100? Well, let's have a look. Can I go from 13 25ths to hundredths? Well, I can, because I can see that 25 times by 4 is 100. Therefore, 13 times by 4 is 52. The next one, again, 25 times by 4 is 100. 10 times 4, because whatever we do to the bottom we do to the top, gives us 40. And finally, the don't know, 25 to get to 100, I times by 4. Whatever we do to the bottom, whatever we do to the denominator, we do to the numerator. 2 times by 4 is 8. Now, this should be really straightforward, because if ever we've got a fraction with a denominator of 100, then we know we can change that fraction straight away to a percentage. So 52% voted yes. 40 out of 100, which can be written as 40%, voted no. And 8 out of 100, which can be written as 8%, voted don't know. So now I just need to go back and put that in my question, making sure I put it in the right place. So voting yes, I can see, was 52%. Voting no, I can see, was 40%. And voting don't know, I can see, was 8%. And there I have got the answers. So as long as we follow different steps through, we can get the answer to this question quite simply. So it's your turn. What percentage of children voted yes? What percentage of children voted no? And what percentage of children voted don't know? I'm going to go through the questions very quickly together. So how many children voted altogether? How are we going to work that out? Well, remember, we would add those all up to work out the total votes. Then we would go through our different questions. Okay, how many voted yes? Well, I can see that 2 voted yes. And you would work your way through these questions until you have a percentage for each option. So pause the video now, please, and complete these 3 questions. What percentage of children voted yes? What percentage of children voted no? And what percentage of children voted don't know? Pause the video now. So you should have given yourself enough time to calculate the answers to that question. And let's have a look at what the answers should have been. How could we have worked these out? So how many children voted altogether? Well, 2 add 17 is 19. Add to 1 is 20. How many voted yes? Well, 2 voted yes. Can we write that as a fraction? Well, 2 children out of 20 voted yes. How many voted no? Well, 17 children voted no. 17 children out of the 20. How many voted don't know? 1. So 1 child out of the 20 voted don't know. What does percent mean? Well, it means out of 100. Can we convert each fraction so it has a denominator of 100? So can I go from 20 to 100? Well, we should be able to see yes, I can if I times by 5. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So whatever we do to the denominator, we do to the numerator. So I times the denominator by 5, so I times the numerator by 5 to get to 10, because 2 times 5 is 10. On the next one, can I get from 20 to 100? Well, we've already proven yes, we can, by multiplying by 5. So now I multiply the numerator by 5, which would give me 85. And then, how many voted don't know? Again, and we already know we can go from 20 to 100 by timesing by 5, and I can see that 1 times 5 would give me 5. The last final step is to convert our fractions into percentages, which is the easiest step of the lot, because we know that if we get that magical denominator of out of 100, we can straight away convert that to 10%. If I get the magical denominator of 100, we can straight away convert it to a percentage. And same again here, the magical denominator of 100, we can straight away convert it into a percentage. So what percentage of children voted yes? Well, 10%. What percentage voted no? 85%. And what percentage voted don't know is 5%. So please mark your answers for that. If you've gone wrong a little bit, just try and do it again now when we've talked through it and see if you can have a go at doing it correctly, okay? Right. What I would like you to do now, and this is very similar to what we did yesterday. In fact, it's just a very quick recap of what we've done yesterday, because I think it's important that we keep this fresh in our mind. So for the first one, these are very simple. You just have to convert those to percentages. The next set, you have to find the equivalent fraction. Remember, percent means out of 100, so you need to get your denominators to 100. And these ones are the hardest ones, because this box you will have to simplify using our 4 questions. I'll just remind you of what they are again now. Do they both go into the 10 times table? Do they both go into the 5 times table? Do they both go into the 2 times table? And do they go into any other times table? Once you have simplified, then you have to get them to a denominator of 100. Okay, so I'd like to pause the video now and complete those 9 questions in your maths book. Okay, so you should have given yourself enough time to complete all 9 questions. What I would like you to do is to take a picture of those 9 questions in your maths book and send them across to your class teacher via Class Dojo on the messenger. Send them across that we can see if you've managed to get them right or not. Okay, it'll allow us to give you that support if we need to. Okay, and what you need to do now is you need to log on to Class Dojo and complete the activity which has been set for today. Now, that activity is a worksheet which has been based around all the things that we have just gone through. So please use what we have just been doing to complete that worksheet. If you use what we've talked about today in that worksheet, the chances are you will be able to get most of it right. So make sure you're thinking back to this session and what you've done and then completing the work. Remember, if you are struggling with this, me and Miss Beck are both live on Microsoft Teams from 10:30 until 11 to give you support with your work. Please log on to Teams at this time if you need this support. If you've gone through this work and you feel confident and you've completed the sheet and you feel confident with the work you've done and you've submitted it on Class Dojo to us so that we can see that you've completed that worksheet, then you do not need to log on to this live session. Thank you once again for your hard work today, and I will see you again tomorrow.